Okay, welcome back to part 3 now of chapter 3. This will be it for this week. Denial of service is where we start. So denial of service is one of the risks that you would be testing for in your vulnerability test. The denial of service attack prevents legitimate users from accessing network resources. So they might overwhelm a server just to slow it down or to keep true customers from getting access to a Walmart website to buy whatever they want or need, right? That's a denial of service. The attackers aren't attempting to access the information necessarily. Really, they're out to cripple the network, right? This is going to prevent legitimate users from accessing the network resources, that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's denial of service. Now I put this picture here to kind of help explain the picture. So on the bottom, we have the normal path, which is, we're sending packets across like an ICM packet. It has a limit of like 65,000 bits we mentioned. But what a hacker might do is flood the application server, right? The Walmart server or the Target server might flood it with packets, and it overflows the memory, right? And that overflow is going to result in a denial of service. It's going to force the system to slow down or cripple it. So the normal path would be on top. I'm on my computer, I send with my IP address, I send my packet, and it has a limit on the number of bits, right? And that's a normal transaction, and the application server can manage that. At the bottom, what the hacker is doing is flooding it in a denial of service attack. And a denial of service attack is from one computer or client to, say, another, to an application server. Next, we'll talk soon about distributed denial of service, which multiplies the attack instead of just one-on-one. So the ping of death is a type of attack that comes here in denial of service. It's not as common as it was during the 1990s, right? But related to this, which is common today, more prevalent, is an ICMP flood attack, which I'm showing on the screen. And so here's how it works. It's an old but useful example of a denial of service attack, right? This causes the victim computer to freeze or malfunction by overflowing the memory or the processing capability, right? The memory overflows because you've sent more data than the system can manage, right? And so the attack simply creates ICMP packets that's larger than the maximum allowed. I mentioned 65,535 bytes. And the user system at the destination can't handle the assembled, oversized packets, and it causes the system to crash or freeze, right? That's an example of a buffer overflow attack. So when I contact an application server, a portion of the memory is allocated to this interaction. And if I can force that to overflow, I have now A, caused denial of service, and B, I can get in as the hacker and I gain administrative purposes through this buffer overflow. So really, it starts with a denial of service and ends up in a buffer overflow attack. So two types of risks there that we would be looking for. And one of the solutions to that is that I would want to manage the memory when my computer programmers are writing the program, right? It's one reason I close down applications as I'm using them to manage the memory. So when the target machine attempts to put the pieces back together of these ICMP packets, the total exceeds the limit, and of course the buffer overflow occurs. And so that's kind of some background there. Now, distributed denial of service is a denial of service attack, but it's on steroids, right? This attack is from a host from on a host for multiple servers or workstations. So again, most of these attacks are multi-phased, right? So I may install my malware with command and control mechanism on 100 or 1,000 computers spread throughout the world. And then when I'm ready as the hacker, I notify them, bam, start this massive denial of service. It's not just on an application, but on a wide range of capability, right? So networks can be flooded with billions of packets, and the course going to lose bandwidth, and there will be latency, which is a degradation of speed, internet speed, and oftentimes people that are part of the attack, their computer, they're not aware of it, right? They have been attacked by the hacker pre-planning and pre-planting that software in there. Now, the dark DDoS attack is kind of a smokescreen, right? And so what they'll do is they'll create a smokescreen attack, which is really to distract all of us from the real attack coming, and that's a dark DDoS attack. Okay, botnets I mentioned earlier can be used for DDoS attacks. I mentioned they could also be used for key logging and spamming. Okay, so buffer overflow attacks related to that, right? So the attacker finds a vulnerability. So if you have poorly written code that's not checking for the amount of memory space that's being used, right? Your code has to manage the memory, right? And so the attacker's going to write code that overflows the buffer, fills the buffer with these executable program codes, and the operating system, is going to try and run this code. And what it's going to happen is it's going to overflow the memory, which causes the program to, the computers, the servers to act wanky. That's not an official term, so don't write that down. And it's going to change the attacker's permissions, elevate them. They may become administrator permissions now, which is how that would work, right? The OS is going to run the code then that whatever the hacker installs. Here are some types of buffer overflow attacks that were listed in the literature for your reading. I think they're self-explanatory. Now, eavesdropping is when an attacker can listen in on unencrypted network connections. So you might say, well, encryption then is the answer. Well, encryption also slows down systems, right? Latency. And so it's not always the answer, right? And if a packet is encrypted and I can't look in it, like your network intrusion detection system can't look in an encrypted packet, there could be malware encrypted in that packet and I don't see it. So encryption isn't always the answer, right? So eavesdropping, though, again, back to that topic, an attacker can listen in, or they're watching this unencrypted network communications in order to intercept confidential information, gather credentials, to maybe an extend attack or build on another attack later. You do eavesdropping with sniffing tools, right? And they're designed to capture copies of the packets being sent across the network. And these sniffing tools are known, they capture the packets. They're known, one is Wireshark, that's a very famous one. Another one is TCP dump, right? And so good guys can use those to sniff the packets and make sure that what's coming through should be and that there are no threats. But bad guys can use them too. And that's why some of these are illegal to have on your computers based on various states that you live in. So to defend against eavesdropping, you want network equipment and applications that communicate over encrypted protocols if that's important to you. Now, a man-in-the-middle attack is when the attacker can inject themselves. So eavesdropping was just watching it and sniffing the traffic. Man in the middle is actually injecting, the hacker injects themselves. In this slide, it's Peter. injects themselves into the conversation and they become part of it. It's no longer just eavesdropping, but you're rerouting the traffic, right? So you're manipulating the messages in the headers, etc., as they go back and forth. So Jack really wants to communicate with Jill. They're going to send over their key, and really Jill would send back her key to confirm. It's the three-way handshake, right? But Peter gets in the middle because he's been sniffing, and now he's watching, and he grabs the packet and injects his code. So Peter sends his own key back to Jack instead of getting Jill's key, right? Jill was trying to send her key back, but Peter gets in the middle, grabs the packet, changes it to his key, and now it's really Jack and Peter having a conversation when Jack thinks it's with Jill. So Jack is going to send his account information, and Peter sends Jill his own account information, and Jill can then send money. She thinks it's to Jack, but it's to Peter. That's a good example of a man in the middle. Now, there's also network session hijacking. So this enables the attacker to join that TCP session. Remember, TCP is that layer 4 transportation protocol. So when you hijack a session, you're actually, the attacker makes both parties think that he or she is the other party. So the man in the middle is a form of network session hijacking that we just talked about. It's a complex attack, really beyond the scope of saying anything else about it. But what the network session is doing is the attack is in relation to the ISN in this case, that sequence number that puts the packets back together. And that's really what we need to know. So man-in-the-middle attack can be penetrated by hijacking communication sessions between a web browser. But in network session hijacking, we're actually manipulating the ISN. This is also related when you can get into the session. You can do ARP poisoning or DNS poisoning. And ARP translates this risk. ARP translates your IP address to your MAC address and vice versa. Well, if I can get in as the attacker and put in my IP address to your MAC address, now I can reroute traffic to me, right? And vice versa. Same with DNS poisoning. We also want to remember, this is bigger than just IT or the technical tools. We want to think about physical security, protecting the network physically, right? This requires, a lot of times, this is how inside attacks more likely occur. One way is keeping keyloggers. A keylogger can be software or hardware. If it's hardware, it has to be attached to the back of the computer. So as your IT people are doing inspections of and audits of computer devices at work, they should be looking for keyloggers. Keyloggers are attached to the back of the keyboard as it connects to the computer, right? It can also be software loaded on the computer, and it will behave like a Trojan. So you may download a program you like, but inside there was a keylogger software. So every time you type a password, it's sending those keystrokes out to the bad person, right? Really, it's available as spyware also, okay? Hardware or software. They gave a couple of slides on keyloggers that were related to the readings. So I would just go there for those. Now, you want to lock things up from a physical security perspective. Server room should have one entrance with no windows, and the servers then should also be locked within a case in that room. The average person should not be able to get in there because they can pick a deadbolt, right? Especially experienced hackers. So you want to use maybe electronic keypads that log information, etc., and apply physical access controls to include fencing, to include monitoring, gates, guards, ID badges. I mentioned hardware locks. A bump key is a regular key with the bumps on the edge. And then there's electronic key systems. A combo lock is that pin we punch in. We can use man traps, physical tokens, alarms, air gaps, etc. So I'm out of time. That ends chapter 3. I look forward to your risk register and discussion.